Okay, so how to create a winning CV? It's a question, I suppose, those of us who work in careers and career development are constantly asked. And there's so many views on CVs in terms of what makes a quality CV, what makes a CV stand out from the crowd, that there's an awful sense of there is as many CV ideas or recommendations as there are people writing them. So what I'm going to take you through today is just some of the best practice that we have found over the years in terms of what works well for student CVs and early years professionals and graduates. So what we'll cover today are the basics of the CV, the building blocks, what you definitely need to have on your CV to make an impact. I'm going to spend some time looking at structure and layout, the importance of how the CV looks, how it flows, and how it is really important that the reader can navigate your CV in a way in which best suits their needs. Then to move on to connecting your CV to the specific job that you're applying for. So this idea of one CV will do for all job applications has to be disregarded, knowing that you do need to connect the content of your CV for each job that you apply to. The importance of not just listing things on your CV like an itinerary, but actually putting CV content down, which provides evidence of skills and experience and how to make the most of those from a good impact point of view. And therefore, then we can set your CV apart. I've put in some slides at the end around the area of cover letter, because it's often the case, especially with SMEs, who are one of the biggest recruiters of our graduates, that they will request a cover letter. So we have some slides on that. And then at the end, which will tie in with your own Q&As, some frequently asked questions. So that's the general sketch for how today's session is going to go. Then moving on from this, I suppose I'm going to throw it over to you to get some audience participation first. So I'm just going to ask you, in your opinion, what is the main purpose of a CV? Is it to get you the job, to demonstrate your skills and experience, or to get you shortlisted for interview? So I'm just going to put a poll up now and ask you to put your choice on what you think the purpose of a CV is. Okay, I'm just seeing the answers coming in now. And we have a nice mix of choices here. So I'm just going to publish those results, and you can see that the majority of us have selected, with 57% B, demonstrate your skills and experience. And whilst every answer in this is somewhat right, what we feel in the Careers and Employability Centre is that the purpose of the CV, the main purpose, is actually to get you shortlisted for the interview. Now, you do this by showing your skills and experience, but you also need to make those skills and experience relevant to the position that you're looking for. So we would suggest that C is the area that we need to focus on when helping you prepare for creating that winning CV. So as I say, your aim with your CV is to make it impossible for the reader or the employer or the hiring manager not to shortlist you. So you need to have enough keywords, enough skills, and enough matching there for the reader to be able to say, I need to meet with this person. They're ticking as many of the boxes as I need ticked. And how you do that, how do you make it impossible for the reader not to shortlist you? You start off by making sure that your CV is easy to read and navigate, that there's enough white space, that there's a flow between the different sections, that there are enough relevant sections, and that you've used bullet points in the right way, so that it's an easy CV to pick up and see where the key experiences and skills are. Next to that is that it's specific to the role. Okay, so that it actually matches what it is, the job spec that you are looking at as, whether that's a job advertisement or a job spec itself. That there are skills listed, but also there's evidence of those skills. So not just that they're listed, that you're actually showing how you have used or applied those skills in the past. And the same with experiences. So evidence is really important in terms of making it impossible for the employer not to shortlist you for interview. We also, with a good, strong, or a winning CV, have a sense of personal attributes jumping out of the page. So saying that you were involved, or if you've had part-time work throughout your time in college, can show an element of work ethic. If you put yourself to do some certificate of online training, which was not obligatory, but you just volunteered to do it, that can show a commitment to developing your learning or a curiosity. So you're not just telling me that you have a good work ethic or that you have curiosity, you're showing me. And then I suppose the CV that really ticks all the boxes is the one that makes the reader want to meet you in person or, in these days, online, virtually, to learn more about you. But the first 4 points are the essential part, so that you're a contender in the eyes of the employer. So then moving on from that, I can imagine being in your circumstances, and I was and often still am, by looking at so many CV templates and versions out there. You put CV template into Google, you will get millions of versions. And I suppose then the answer is, how do you know what the right version is for you? And it is a very specific thing. We don't say there's one template that is the best, but we do give advice in terms of best practice in terms of CVs. So I'm just going to give you a short sort of overview of the different types of CVs that are out there. And you probably have seen most of these, or even have one sitting in front of you now in your own version. The first one is the chronological CV. And that is a CV that follows a very clear timeline. So starting with your education or employment from your most recent experience, working backwards. It is the most traditional CV format and is, I suppose, well respected by the employer. The next type of CV is a functional CV, or in shorthand for that, it sort of focuses more on skills, so a skills-based CV. It doesn't necessarily have clear timelines. It focuses on more what you have, skills that you've developed, achievements that you've had, experiences that you have had as well. It is useful for candidates or people writing CVs who have limited work experience or gaps in experience, or trying to transition from one particular career area into another. There can be sometimes a sense with some employers that there are gaps there because we don't really follow a clear timeline with it. So there can be some sort of cloudy views from some employers around the functional CV, but it definitely has its merit. The final one that I'm going to I suppose, give you a category is the chrono-functional CV. Not easy to say, but actually a really useful structure. It's a mixture of both the chronological and functional CV, so a mixture of a timeline and skills. And it's the one that we actually use as our standard template in DQIT, and what we actually recommend for most graduates. But depending on your own situation and where you're coming from, you may want to choose one or the other, and we can support you individually with any of those choices. So again, selecting the best CV layout for you may be things that you need to consider would be the amount of work experience you have to date, or the types of relevant education, skills, or experience. I know that we have students coming from international backgrounds here in the Institute and logging in today. And maybe in the countries that they're coming from, it is the norm, let's say, to have a one-page resume as opposed to a two-page CV. It might be the norm to include a photo. In some other countries within Ireland and the UK, that is not the norm, and it's not something that we would recommend. So again, if you're applying to a different country, you have to understand what the either industry or the cultural norms are for that particular organization. So again, it's always about tailoring the CV to suit the employer. For me, the most important consideration, and for you today, is to think about the layout that best showcases your suitability to the role that you're applying to. And for that reason, we're going to focus today on the chrono-functional CV, as it's a good option for most of our graduates. So another little bit of over to you. I'm going to ask you to look at the general layout or section headings of two types of CVs. The first column on the left-hand side is layout A. Main name and personal details, personal summary, skills profile, education, work experience, interests and achievements, and references. Okay, so in total there, we have about 7 section headings. Layout B has 5 section headings, starting with name and personal details, work experience, education, skills profile, and interests and achievements. So now back over to you. I'm going to ask you which of these you feel would be the most suitable layout for a student or a recent graduate. Okay, so quick off the mark here now, we can see that most people are selecting. Let me publish that for you. So the majority of us have selected A. That A is the most suitable type of CV layout. And you're bang on the money, those of you who've selected that. Again, not that there's anything wrong with layout B, but I explained to you now why the sections in layout A are most suitable to a student or a recent graduate. Because there is those 7 sections, you know that you have to work harder as a student or a recent graduate to demonstrate your skills and experience. You don't have that background of strong professional experience in the area that you want to work in. So you have to make a skills profile and personal summary stand out. You have to work on your education and make sure that you are making the education as relevant before your work experience, because for most of us, the education is the most relevant experience we have to the job that we're applying for. Underneath that then would be work experience. Interests and achievements. For experienced professionals, they're an optional extra that you can put in, but for a recent graduate or a student, they are often the differentiator between what sets you apart from other candidates. It also shows that type of personal attributes. References are a key part of any student or recent graduate CV, where you would have one academic and one character reference. It's not as necessary for experienced professionals because they will wait for you to be successful at interview before they check out your references. So for that reason, we are looking at the type of section headings for the layout A, student and recent graduates. So moving on to getting into the headspace of what do employers want. So to get your head into the employer or put your feet in the shoes of the employer, when they're thinking about graduates coming on board or any position really, they are looking for a few key areas. Academic relevance and results. So what is your course? How well have you done at it? And what did you learn? What skills did you develop during that time? Work experience. Do you have relevant work experience? Did you go out in a placement? Did you have a part-time job as a student? Are you coming from a different industry background, which shows different types of skill sets? So work experience is a key area that want to see have you been involved in. Extracurricular activities. What have you done outside of college life or outside of part-time work to show your motivation, enthusiasm, or volunteering, which can also be used in the work experience category. And then evidence of transferable, those soft skills, leadership, communication, teamwork, those skills you hear time and time again, as well as technical, discipline-specific skills. So that's what an employer wants to see in your CV, and you have to lay it out in a very easy way so they can pick it out. The next thing to refer to is the employer has put together a job spec for most job applications. Sometimes you'll see jobs being advertised and there's very little detail. But for most graduate jobs, summer internships, and placement opportunities, the job spec is something that is, I suppose, your main reference point. The job spec will give you the necessary information to help you get shortlisted. It will have, at a minimum, a summary of what the position is. It will most likely include overview of responsibilities. It will have some degree of a background to the company, its culture or values, or at least a website link that you can look that up on. It will have essential criteria, what they want from a candidate, as well as desirable criteria. So some degree of all of the above points are going to be available on most job specs that you look at. And that is your reference point for how you adapt your CV. Just, I suppose, a word of warning that we know ourselves, myself and Anthony in particular, who have been working with students and graduates for a number of years, is that often a student will be intimidated by a job spec. They'll say, we need to see somebody with 3 to 5 years work experience. I suppose also to bear in mind that the job spec is an employer's wish list. You don't need to tick every box. So if they say experience 3 to 5 years or a minimum of 2 years experience, put your job application in, put your CV in, and bear in mind that you have been in college for a minimum of 2 to 3 years, and you developed work experience and relevant experience during that time. So don't be shy about pushing yourself forward for things that you feel that you don't tick every box on. But your job is, as much as possible, to match your CV to the job spec. The use of keywords, the use of key skills that are outlined in the job spec. This is increasingly important for major employers, such as the big multinational corporations who use automated tracker devices or automated ways of looking at CVs. And they will just scan your CV and see are the keywords and skills in there. And if you don't have those listed, your CV will not be shortlisted. So that's another really valuable way for looking at the job spec. Just to give you an example, and again, zoom in if you need to see this a little bit more. So this is a sample graduate job spec for a sales and marketing executive position. We've highlighted some of the keywords in this, but you could go through this yourself again and highlight other words that we haven't highlighted. So it outlines working as a team player. So that's a big aspect. That's in the first line of the job spec. So it would be really important that somewhere in your CV, if you're applying for this position, that you match team player or teamwork connected into this position. So working as a team player alongside national accounts directors, you'll be a key point of contact within the commercial organization, and we were responsible for another big area here, managing relationships. Okay, so highlighting these key areas, and this is what we'd recommend that you do, that you download or you go online, look at job specs and look at the key terminology that they're using. If that terminology is not on your CV, then your likelihood of being shortlisted is hugely limited. It's not just skills or technical experience. It's also about looking at words like being proactive, strong communication skills, the terminology they're using like key performance indicators, which are KPIs. So you can see that we've highlighted areas on this job spec which are an indication of the skills and the attributes and the desirable as well as the essential criteria that this particular employer is looking for. So scanning the job spec and making sure that you highlight these keywords and incorporate them in your CV is going to be really important to create that winning version of your CV. So back over to you again. And the next thing I'm going to ask you to think about in terms of skills development is, in your opinion, what's the most overlooked source of relevant skills? So where students or graduates develop relevant skills and they don't include it on CVs. So what's the most overlooked source of relevant skills on student or graduate CVs? A, B, C, and D. So on this one, you have 4 options. So I'm just going to start a poll now for you. And the first one is external volunteering activities. The next is course-based activities and projects on your actual degree course. Your research that you've done. Or D, on-campus activity in student engagement, such as being a class rep or an ambassador. So let me see now what people think. Okay. So most people, by a majority of 1, have selected B, and our experience in the Careers and Employability Centre would concur with that. We would feel that students come in with the title of their degree, but do not put the details of modules, projects, activities that you've done to demonstrate skills as clearly as you could. And then you feel vulnerable about the lack of relevant experience that you have without actually thinking about all the relevant skills that you have developed over the course of your studies. Okay, that's really good that most of you think about that in area. Of course, all of these aspects are really important. Each one of these options are important to include on your CV, but often the most overlooked is actually your learning and skills development on your actual course. Now, the next slide is again, I suppose, a section to help you with understanding how you demonstrate specifically your skills based on a job spec criteria. So if I was to take you back to that job spec that we were looking at for the graduate marketing executive, if we think about you as a student, just this area, your experience, every student and every person on this seminar or webinar has experience in some way, shape, or form. You may have had a placement, work experience, involvement in projects, or hobbies and sports. So everybody has some degree of experience that is specific to you. The next section that everybody here has is your degree learning, the knowledge, your course-based specific learning, applied skills as well as knowledge areas. It's really important that you're aware of breaking down your modules into specific areas so you know which ones to highlight. The next section of your experience that is really important is to think about your generic transferable skills. Think back to that job spec where you saw words like strong communication skills. So thinking about how you've developed those, and they're transferable to multiple work situations. And the final area here is your personal attributes, what other people say about me, and it's really important in terms of looking at the job spec and saying what in the job spec has highlighted or outlined about attributes such as being hardworking or trustworthy or reliable, okay? So if we were to think back to that job spec, we saw terms like fast-paced, challenging environment. So you can demonstrate from your experience, maybe on placement, maybe from your part-time work, working in a busy restaurant or a customer-facing role, maybe on the sports pitch where you have had to deal with fast-paced and challenging environments. So bearing that in mind, they're looking for that, but you can draw from your array of experiences where you have shown an ability under fast-paced, challenging environments, okay? The same, the next area that they're looking for is a technical area. So they've outlined marketing degree and commercial awareness. So from your studies to date in your degree, you should be able to demonstrate either by highlighting projects or modules that you've studied that you have the marketing degree and know-how as well as the commercial awareness. Moving on from that, they have mentioned a number of different generic or transferable skills. Ones that jumped out at us were team player, communication, and key performance indicators. So again, what have you done in your past in terms of college work, part-time work, industry placements, summer volunteering that can show that you worked as part of a team, that you communicate well, and that you're able to reach targets. And then finally, they've asked for somebody to be proactive and ambitious. How can you demonstrate that you are a proactive person? Possibly you sourced your own summer internship. You might have gone abroad for the summer to travel in previous years, unfortunately not this year, but to show proactive and being ambitious. So think about your CV and how you're showing those skills in a multitude of different environments, okay? So then moving on from that, what we tend to see is a lot of repetition or maybe not very inspiring ways of describing your skills. So I have done a degree. I worked at, just repeated, sort of maybe not enthusiastic or positive action words. So following this session, I will send you on a list of really useful action words and impact statements. These are, of course, always available on our Moodle careers page. But just to show you good sentences or power words or phrases that you can use in your CV. Demonstrated skills in, strong knowledge of or experience as, provided technical assistance. These are great bridging sentences that are action verbs and show a professionalism which can elevate your CV. Instead of saying I have done or completed, think about other words: presented, assigned, coordinated, organized, instrumental in, achieved. These are all positive words, and again, will influence the reader. And without you even knowing it, they will look at you in a positive light. So again, this is a really useful resource to help you expand your vocabulary and your articulation within your CV, but also be really useful for interviews. So the layout presentation of a CV is the next stage. And this is where maybe you can look at your own CV by sharing or for looking at your screen, or if you have a version printed out, and start making notes on your actual CV. So I'm actually just going to take you through this slide very quickly. This is just a sample for the slide of what a CV layout would be for our chronofunctional CV. Your name at the top of the page, followed by 3 bullet points of a personal summary, focusing on your current situation, key strengths and skills, moving into a skills profile, which can be a specific technical skills profile for more technical degrees, or a generic skills profile, which has both technical and those soft transferable skills. Moving then into education and qualifications with clear dates, modules, experiences, and projects. Moving on then to your work experience, and that can be broken into relevant work experience if you have relevant experience, general work experience if you have outside your degree specific experience, and you can include voluntary experience in that area as well. So it's not just one type of experience that you can include. Then moving into interest and achievements, a really important selling point for anybody who has, I suppose, been involved in clubs or societies, voluntary work, or has a specific interest in an area that tells the reader something more about you and your suitability for the role. And then finally, references. So I'm now just going to toggle it up to another type of CV to show you what we will have up on Moodle, and I will send on after today's session. So that's just uploading now, and you should be able to see it. And again, I would encourage you to zoom in or make the screen fit the full version so that you can see this in detail. But you can see that a CV should have your name at the top and your personal details taking up as least space as possible. Moving into a profile, all student and recent graduate CVs should have a profile which outlines a little bit about them. It's a little bit like the handshake of a CV. So moving into that, then your skills profile, education and qualifications, nicely laid out, then down to related industry experience. I'm going to move over to the next page now, looking at relevant work experience, voluntary experience, interest and achievements, and references. So you can see how that layout is easy to follow. The use of bullet points is really, really important, and a nice timeline in each one of those. So a copy of this will be available to you on Moodle, and I will send it on to you also after the session. And I'm going to go into that in a little bit more detail now. So I'm going to go back to the general presentation. You should be able to see that now, and move into the content breakdown. So make notes on this if you have your CV out. Personal details. It should not take up 3/4 or 1/4 of the top of the page. It should be literally short but accurate. There's no need for curriculum vitae on the top of the page. Put your name big and bold. We would suggest size 16 or 14 font there. And then the rest should be actually smaller than the rest so the size 11 possibly would be good there. Smaller font and horizontally across the top of the page. Make sure that you put a professional email account. We've seen our fair share of unprofessional or immature ones. Goodtimegary at gmail.com is one that stands out for me over the years, but there's plenty of other ones. So make sure if you don't have one that you do set one up and put that on your CV. We would not be recommending that you put your DKIT student number CV, that you make this your own personal one. For international graduates, we would suggest that you do put a line underneath your personal details that states that you're eligible to work from let's say September 20 to 21 unrestricted under the 3rd level graduate scheme, because that can ease some of the concerns from employers. So that's a really important point for international students. Moving on to personal summary. The key differentiators for the personal summary. So this is a bit where you can really set yourself apart. This is the bit you'll change for every CV that you write for each company. So 3 bullet points is how we suggest it. Who you are, your academic background and key qualities. The second is your key skills and how you've evidenced those. And then the third is your career ambition, or if you're going for placement or summer internship, your placement motivation. It needs to represent you. It cannot be just a general Googled type of personal summary that we would not be able to identify you from. Avoid an overload of generic buzzwords. Try and put a few in there, obviously key skills, but make it relevant to you. And I would always say, and people who do this type of work would say, we should be able to recognize you from your personal summary. It shouldn't be so generic that it could belong to anybody. Next, your skills profile. Again, this is the section that we would recommend comes underneath your personal summary. It can be broken into a technical skills section by itself or a general skills profile. And again, you can zoom into this or look at the templates we have. It's really important that you include this, because when employers are looking at it, they want to be able to see what technically can you provide. So if you're coming from, let's say, a computer or engineering background, name the types of skills you have and just list the particular versions of that skill, or like an example for programming, you would list Java, C#, JavaScript, the types of programming languages that you have. And the same will be repeated if you were, let's say, a nursing student or a veterinary nursing student and you had clinical skills, you would put in the clinical skills that you have developed. Transferable work skills then would be the other skills that you know that you definitely can bring or that have been listed on the job spec. And don't just list them, say how you develop them. And again, if you read through our samples, we will tell you how it is that you can expand on just listing a transferable skill. So don't just list communication, say how you've developed that skill from your range of experiences. It should still not take up more than 2 lines, but enough to show that how you've applied that skill in the past. Again, this is the bit that's going to make it easy for them to shortlist you. Your education and qualifications is the next section, making sure you work from most recent backwards, only as far as the Leaving Cert if you have a Leaving Cert. We don't want to see primary schools or junior certs or big tables. What we want first is your current degree, then working backwards. All dates must be aligned. So if you've chosen to go on the right or left-hand side of the page, make sure you stick with that throughout the whole CV. Your third level education, bold the title of your degree rather than where you've studied it, because it's most important to see what you studied. Make sure you include a selection of modules, and make sure that you include either a dissertation or a key project to demonstrate what you've designed or been part of during your time in college. If you have any additional qualifications, such as relevant certificates, green certs, CPR, Google Analytics, make sure you list them underneath your formal education and the date that they were completed. This can be a really useful section for employers. Moving on from that, the work experience, as we said already, they can be broken down into related, other work experience, or voluntary experience. If you only have one type of experience, only use one heading. Make sure you bold the title of what it is you worked on, and ensure you include the company name and again the dates that you worked there. Very easy to follow. Outlines the skills that you have used whilst in that workplace, rather than just listing the job spec or your responsibilities. So for an example there, responsible for assisting a team of 4 people with the recruitment, training and development of the company employees with an average induction of 10 people per month. So I'm not just telling you what my responsibility was, I'm showing you what I did. I've used stats, figures and data where I could to back up that experience. So think about that in terms of any of your work experience. And again, I've used action verbs, assisting, development, training, okay? So that's really important. And again, you can look through these samples in your own time. The additional sections, interests and achievements. We know that most people travel, and people say that they read, people say that they like to socialize with friends. This is not going to elevate your CV. If you do include interests and achievements, make sure that they are either related to the job or they're genuine interests involving either leadership roles or achievements. And they should be relatively recent, within the last 3 to 4 years. So examples there like the DKT Elevate Award, class rep, or you're involved in a running group. You don't just like to go out and run or go to the gym. Making sure you're showing group teamwork and setting goals. It's really important. Finally, the references bit. And this is the section where, as a graduate or a student, you should include the name and details of one academic reference and one work or character reference. You can put available on request, but it is best where you can to include the references. And if you are a very experienced professional, sometimes they don't use that section. But for all students and recent graduates, we would recommend that. And again, we've shown you an example of how to outline that. It shouldn't take up much of the space horizontally across the bottom of the page, and it takes up no more than 3 to 4 lines. Okay, so we've got just a little bit more of tips to take you through now, and I know we're almost up at our 40 minutes. So useful information to help you format, because I know an awful lot of our work in our careers work is about reformatting or helping students reformat their CVs. Get to know Microsoft Word, okay? It becomes your best friend when you're trying to squeeze things into spaces or make things look presentable. So if you can just look here at this section, so this is a screenshot of the dash of any Microsoft Word document. Toggle over to your layout section and look at things like margins. If you click on that, it should be able to show you to narrow the margin. So therefore you can make more space on your actual CV. If you want to put skills in, list them parallel to each other in 2 columns, you can click on this column section here. Spacing in between sections, indents, all of this is available on this one. And we can also upload more sessions around how to use it for CV formatting. But just to give you tips around that, I thought would be useful. In terms then of fonts and styles, we would prefer you to use Arial, Calibri, Tahoma, any of the sans serif. Of course, it's your own preference, but I would say nothing that looks too cartoony. And Arial and Calibri tend to look good. Size 12 is the normal font size for any CV. It can go down to a size 11, but we would say nothing less than that. One font size only on the main body of any CV, so don't have multiple. Maybe headings can obviously be bigger and your name, but keep to the one size for everything else. Use consistency in font, bolding, underlining, and caps. So if one section has caps, make sure that all sections have caps. So that's really important, that it makes it look presentable. I would always say that bullet points are your friend. If you're looking at your CV now and there's a big paragraph ahead of you, I am telling you that employers will not look at it. The average time frame that people say employers look at a CV is possibly about 30 seconds. It can be as low as 6 seconds. So bullet points are a great way for people to quickly see your experiences and skills. So they are your friend. It's not an essay and it's not a personal conversation. Spell check has its place, but it's not CV proof. If I see one collage for college each day of my life as a careers officer, I'll see 100. So make sure that you do check it with your own eyes. And if you're not good at that type of thing, getting a friend or somebody in the careers office to look it through for you is important as well. So just some general FAQs that we might be able to go through again. If the font is small on this, you can make it bigger and zoom in. But some general queries, and maybe there's some that you might have yourself, but it would be around the area of can my CV be longer than 2 pages? We would say, unless it's a 1-page resume, 2 pages is the maximum. The only exception to this, if you're going for an academic role or an actual doctor medical CV, which due to publications and other experiences, it can be longer than that, but 2 pages is the max. Do I need a cover letter? Still quite a common request from many of the employers and mostly SMEs. So if they ask for one, they want you to submit one. So avoid generic, untailored cover letters. Make sure you make them specific to each one. And I have some slides at the end of this to take you through that. How much personal information should I include? There are 9 grounds for discrimination within Europe. You do not need to include date of birth, nationality, gender, marital status, PPS numbers. There's a question around address. If you feel you're going to be discriminated against because of your address, you do not need to leave it in, but we would recommend that you do where possible. Should I include a photo on my CV? For CVs within Ireland and the UK and a lot of European countries, it is not required and it is not advisable. However, in the US and some European countries, we understand that it is normal, so you have to be looking at the country that you're applying to. But a CV or a LinkedIn profile should always have a professional photo, and Anthony will talk to you more about that on our session on Friday. Do I need to have a LinkedIn account? or do I need to have a CV if I have a LinkedIn account? You need both is the answer. These are all tools in your recruitment toolkit or job seeking toolkit. Your CV is a vital building block for your job search. And it's actually much easier to create your LinkedIn account if you have a strong CV and you've put your groundwork in for that. So you can and should add your CV to your LinkedIn and make sure that both match each other and the information mirrors in both areas. Some other questions that we get quite regularly would be, I started a degree before, but I didn't finish it. Should I include it on my CV? The answer here is always be honest. Employers will understand. Name the course and the year and put beside it discontinued. You don't need to say any more than that, but just when it comes to interview, you can honestly answer about that you want to pursue a different area. It is understandable. If you're only on the course for a few months, it's not necessary to put it in, but this would be for anybody who's done a year of a course or more. I have work gaps on my CV. What should I do? So let's say you're a mature student and you have taken time off to take care of your family. Put it in. It is understandable and it actually is respected by employers. So whether that be for a career break and whether to care for a family or to travel, make sure that you do acknowledge gaps on your CV. The next question would be, I have lots of very similar but separate work experiences. Do I have to put each of them in? It's a good question that we get quite a lot, and our suggestion would be that you combine your experiences under the same bullet points, but list the different places that you worked in. And the sample of that is below. So this was a person who worked as a waitress or front of house positions, the name of each restaurant or a facility that they worked in, the dates were there, and then bullet points to incorporate all of those areas. So that's a useful way of saving space, but also acknowledging your work experience. Quickly on cover letters, and before I open it up to you, cover letters are one-page documents, no more than that. They are a good way for you to, I suppose, signpost to key areas of how you match the job spec without regurgitating what's in your CV. So it's tailored to competencies and it also can be used to see your level of good written communication skills and how professional you are. It's always a form of business letter unless it's a cover email, which you would use the same thing, but you just wouldn't put address in. You'll be using it for both advertised positions or speculative applications, which were talked about yesterday, where you are approaching companies who don't have positions advertised, but you're hoping they may have some positions available. 4 paragraphs in any cover letter, an introductory paragraph to say who you are, what qualifications you have, and why you're interested in the role, and that you're attaching your CV for their consideration. 2 to 3 lines max. A paragraph then underneath that, why are you interested in working for the company? Why are you interested in this specific position? So outline and tell them what it is you like about them. People like to feel like pride in their company, so telling them what you know about them, their achievements, and why you're interested specifically in the position is a really, really good idea. Then the next paragraph is what makes you a strong candidate for the job, an overview of your experience and skills that suits the job spec. And then a nice positive ending paragraph, a concise summary of how you meet the criteria and how you're excited to work for them, your availability for interview, and then a sign off, either yours sincerely or more common now, kind regards. So they're really the baseline. If you're looking at the business format of a cover letter, on the right-hand side is your contact address and details. On the left-hand side below that is the company address and details. You put "re" in the subject line and then "dear," and then continue on with your 4 paragraphs. So that should be a whistle-stop tour through cover letters, which again, we have resources available on Moodle. So in summary, the CV is a tool to help you get shortlisted for interview. That is the core focus. And if you can keep that in mind, it will attach you back to the job spec or the company. Your CV is not just an itinerary of your past and current experiences. It must demonstrate evidence of skills and the impact of those skills and experiences on you as a person and as an employee. It needs to be easy to read and navigate. The use of bullet points, white space, nice clear font. It's essential to match content of CV to specific content of the job spec. We've talked a lot about that. And the need to tailor your CV for each application, specifically changing this personal summary, the skills profile, and the cover letter. we would recommend one stock CV that can be longer than 3 pages, but that when you submit it, you've made it concise and tailored to a 2-page CV. And then finally, Careers and Employability Centre has ongoing support throughout the summer and throughout the academic year, and our resources are always available online and via Careers Connect. So I suppose all that's left for me to say is if you have any questions, please put them into the comments section at the end or now, and myself and Anthony is here as well, and we can jointly answer some of your questions. We're here to help. As I say, the Careers Connect database or portal is becoming more and more central for where we're using and uploading our resources, so do keep your eye on that. We have further webinars this week on interviewing tomorrow and LinkedIn on Friday. So if you haven't signed up, we do urge you to do so and tell your friends. Remote appointments are available, so we can do video or phone appointments. Everything's available on Careers Connect as well. You can follow us on our social media handles for Facebook, Twitter, at DKT Careers. If you are soon to become a graduate, we do recommend that you register on Careers Connect as a graduate, and that we can support you up to 1 year after graduation. So can I hand it back over to you guys and see if there's anybody there who would like to ask a question specifically, or see if there's anything we can help you with before we end the session. Hopefully you found it useful. I think there's some questions coming through now. It can be sometimes just so confusing to know how to adapt an existing CV. So some people may have CVs from transition year that you're looking at. Some people may have CVs that have a lot of formatting, a lot of iconography on them, and whether they're useful. So maybe you have some specific questions around that, and that we can help you with. If not, we're always available at careers@dkt.ie, where you might want to ask questions as well. I'm just going to stop the recording now as well.